Hi, my name is Connor. This is my first YouTube video. A few of my friends told me that I should do a YouTube video or a YouTube channel where I read off paranormal stories or just like Reddit stories in general. Um, so I'm going to start doing that. Um, I have a few stories for us today. Some of them, three of them are from, or two of them now. Two of them are from paranormal encounters, r slash paranormal encounters. Two of them are from r slash let's not meet, and then one from r slash let unexplained. This is going to be a lot of them are very long. This is my first time doing this, so if I stutter a little bit, my bad. Um, I it's my first time doing anything like this. Let's go ahead and start off with the longest one I have here. It's actually really interesting too, from r slash paranormal encounters from Topaz42. Watched my sister walk into her room. When I knocked, the response came from behind me. Had a few of my true paranormal experiences written out in my notes and figured I'd post them here, just join the subreddit. A few smaller stories of mine just include things like seeing shadow figures, some when I was a kid and some more recently. Also some unexplainable sounds here or there too, often accompanied by a figure or something like hearing footsteps as they walked. I'll fully type out the most interesting ones here. So if you like reading true mini paranormal stories, then check out my account to read the others. I'll post the most interesting IMO one here first. Enjoy. And I'm assuming this is the most interesting one. This is pretty interesting. I think this is the only paranormal story of mine that I can't for the life of me debunk or rationalize. Other stories of mine mostly consist of hearing odd noises or voices or seeing specific things for a split second. Though creepy, I can mostly just write them off as just my mind playing tricks on me. Seeing a shadow figure for a brief moment could have just been my hair getting in my peripheral vision. Ghost bird at a pet store I worked at could have just been my brain inserting sounds that it's used to hearing when they're no longer there. And then here's an anecdote from the OP. I have the ghost bird story written out and I'll post it after this one, lol. Back to the story. I like to believe some of these are true as they make for some fun stories to tell and they're just cool to ponder about after the fact. But with this story, though still cool to think about, I am 100% convinced that this was something paranormal. This happened when I was around 17, I think. I'm 20 at the moment. I was just relaxing in my room one day when I suddenly remembered I had something I needed to ask my sister about. Don't remember what it was, but it was probably nothing important. So I got up and I opened the door to go ask her. So in my house, there's a small T-shaped hallway with my room and my sister's room at each of the top ends of the T-shape, with our doors obviously facing each other. So the moment I opened my door, I saw my sister, just she's walking through the hallway into her room, stepped in and closed the door behind her. And then here's another anecdote from the OP. Oh, that's fun. As I'm typing this, I heard a pissed from what sounded like the kitchen. It's 2 a.m. and I am the only one in the house out of their room at the moment. Anyway, that's the end of the anecdote. All I saw was the back of her as she walked in, wearing her typical clothing. Looked like she had a plate of food in one hand, absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. So I'm like, oh, cool. She's right there. I could just ask her before she closes the door. But even though I gave her a yo to get her attention, she closed the door anyway. I figured maybe she had earbuds in, just didn't hear me. So I walked a few steps to her door and knock. No answer. Okay. I knock louder and call her name. Still no answer. At this point, I'm just thinking she must have had her earbuds volume way too loud to hear me. So, as you do when your sibling is annoying or ignoring you, I annoyed her back. I playfully start batting the door like I'm playing the drums, calling out her name in a mildly annoyed sing-song tone. This time I get an answer, but not from in the room. Not from in the room that I swear to God I had watched her walk into and closed the door behind her. No, from behind me. My sister had a face mixed with concern and amusement from seeing me play the drums on her door to her room that she believed was empty. When I turned around to see her standing at the end of the hallway, my heart sank out of my chest. I could legit feel myself go pale in that moment from the sheer horror of the realization that sister in hallway. So then sister isn't in the room. After a second or two of me slowly comprehending that my sister had not actually walked into that room like I'd seen, I pushed myself off the door and I screamed, "Who the fuck is in your room then?" This wasn't just a simple seeing a figure out as a corner of your eye situation. No, I was looking directly at her as she stepped into the room and closed the fucking door. So not only did I see something mimicking my sister, I had also witnessed whatever that was interact with a physical object, closing the door. Nothing about that experience up until I turned around to see my sister behind me had led me to think something was off. It looked exactly like her, was wearing her clothes, was carrying a plate of food to her room as she always does. There was just nothing that stood out as natural about it at all. Though I was genuinely starting to panic, my sister, being the incredible sister she is, calmly walked to the dining room, grabbed a dining room chair, and hoisted it above her head, then walked over to her room going, "You better get the fuck out. You better get the fuck out." So that was that obviously lightened the mood, lol. When she opened the door to check in the room, I was standing far away from it, of course. There was nothing there. We sort of just laughed it off, thinking it was just a weird occurrence. I was still shaky from the adrenaline for a good little while after that. To those that are into paranormal stuff like this, I'm sure this would be what's referred to as a doppelganger. I've heard stories about them, but never really believed them until this experience. Still one of the coolest, creepiest, and funniest paranormal encounter stories I have. Hope you enjoyed, smiley face. That was a really nice story. I had to retake the audio a couple of times because I kept stumbling over my words because of how long it is. I really like the story. I don't know about the doppelganger thing. I think I honestly, I can't really rationalize either. Here's some of my own commentary. I haven't really, personally, I haven't seen anything like that, but I know for a fact if something like that happened to me, I would have done the exact same thing. Actually, I would have just ran out the fucking house. I would not have put up with that. I would have gotten out of there as soon as possible. So props to the OP for not freaking the fuck out like how I would have. On to the next story. This one is relatively short, from Pumpkin Spice 840. Toddler and preschooler describing a girl upstairs plus strange monitor voice. "Hi everyone, I'm looking for advice on how to ask my kids about something strange that's been happening without leading them or scaring them. We recently moved into a new apartment that used to be a retired preschool. Not long after moving in, I started hearing a male voice on my 2-year-old daughter's baby monitor. I assumed I was overtired or imagining it, so I ignored it. But I kept hearing her talking to someone at night. Last night, she stayed with her aunt, who used her own baby monitor, and she heard the male voice too. It said my 4-year-old son's name. And then it looked like my daughter got pushed off the bed. When I tried asking my daughter about it, she says she talks to someone but won't explain further. I asked my son, and at first he said he can't talk about it. Later he said it was a little girl who lives upstairs and that she comes through the window. Mind you, there was no second level on our side of the building. Lately, both kids keep saying they're scared of the monsters outside, which is totally new. If anyone has had something similar happen, how do you document it or handle it? Any advice is appreciated." This was a really good read. When I was reading it, I got shivers at the last paragraph where she said that the kids were scared about monsters outside. That was damn. This was a really fun read. This was a really good one. It was very short. Unfortunately, it was very short. But the comments don't really say anything at all. But other than that, it was a very good read. Let's go on to the next one. This is from r/unexplained. Found an unmarked USB in my car. This is a long one. This is from Jar of Needs. Post title edit. Found a USB in an unmarked envelope in my car. I don't know if this is the right subreddit for this story, so if not, just let me know. OP posted this to r/unexplained. And then OP writes, the other day on my way home from the store, I realized there was an envelope on my passenger seat. My car is usually already pretty messy, so that's why it didn't immediately jump out at me at first. The envelope had nothing on it. It wasn't addressed to me, but was already ripped open. Inside the envelope, a USB flash drive with numbers and letters that I didn't recognize. I know it was put in sometime Saturday morning because I cleaned off my car Friday morning. Then was at work until the wee hours of the night, working outside in the parking lot of where my car is. And there was only about 10 other people with me, would have seen someone and then slept at my boyfriend's house. And I know I always lock it there. People's first question is usually, how did they get into your car? Yes, okay, when I'm at home, I sometimes forget to lock my car because I'm usually doing a couple of trips in the door when I get home. But when I go places, I always lock it. So that leaves really just the morning on Saturday, either at the store I was at or at my house before I went to the store. I didn't want to put it into my computer, but I was obviously dying to know what's on it. So my friend said he has an old computer and I can use that if it still works. And it did. The master folder or whatever had a ton of files all titled Part 2-01 and counting up from there. As we unzip them, we see more folders titled like golf, game, leaderboards, Sequoia, and then within those folders, like 10 more folders of text code docs. Some of them had like someone saying stuff like ick, and more ick, i.e. I don't like this approach, but what's a parent to do? Like what? My friend did some Googling using exact keywords together like jackrabbit and Ghislaine or whatever, a bunch of random stuff. Nothing came up. We put in golf and some of the cities, and we think we found what might be the code from the 2026 update of Golden Tee. You know, the golf game you see in a lot of restaurants and arcades. Huh? It's almost worse than someone putting malware or threatening me or something, because I'm just so confused. This is probably 2 to 3 weeks ago, because I tried to push it out of my mind because it's just so mind-boggling. My boyfriend says it's just one of those things. And that's not enough for me, lol. I can't just not ask why on earth someone would put this in my car, of all cars, of all the streets, of all the cities. Has anyone heard of this? I'm dying over here. My friend is convinced that this is something that might be a frequent occurrence and that some other people might have a similar experience of any sort pertaining to Golden Tee specifically, lol. And then here's an edit. As for the bar theory, I do not live by any bars that have that sort of game. There's only a cafe within walking distance / short drive distance. And we did take precautions, putting it in, like turning off Wi-Fi, and the computer was an old unused one. And OMG, I meant the envelope was unmarked, not the USB, okay? Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Seems like they're having some issues with the people in the comments. There are some images. I'll append them here. This is very, very interesting. And then after reading this, I was scrolling through the comments, and then I Am Camouflage responded with saying it's a software patch for the Golden Tee arcade game version 17.04.07. Why or how it ended up in your car, I have no idea, but this is probably a USB stick that some technician was using to update Golden Tee games. This patch came out in 2022, which explains the 2022 and the version number on the USB stick itself. So it looks like we know what it is. It looks like we know what folders and files are in there, but why would they leave it in their car? Maybe they thought it was their car. Maybe, you know, those videos on TikTok where people just do things to confuse other people. Like there was a dude that made a statue and then put it in the bottom of an ocean in like the Mediterranean. It could be something like that, where it's just a joke where someone's just trying to rage bait or like make a joke out of it, just be random and do something confusing. That's what I can think of, because it is 2025 and people do that. Like I do that, but at the end of the day, we can only guess. At least it wasn't something too malicious. It could have been worse, but hey, thank God it's not. Let's go on to the next one. Here are the two r slash let's not meet ones that I got readied up for us. So the first one is by a deleted account 1 month ago. I was being watched during my nightly run. For some context, I'm 16 and I took up running lately. There aren't many places I can run safely in my city after dark. Most places aren't very well lit up at night. So my best bet was to run at my old school sports field. I live around 100 meters away from it, and the whole area is surrounded by a high wall. Aside from one place where it is a bit lowered, that's why I entered the place because the door next to it doesn't have a handle. Around 15 minutes into my run, I noticed a silhouette watching me from the fence near the big gate on the opposite side of the place. I thought nothing of it. Some part of me thought that it could be my imagination, so I went on with my run. After a time later, I noticed an actual person sitting on a lowered wall watching me. I looked at him or her for a while and went on with my business as before. The person was just sitting there for some time until I noticed they jumped over inside. And since that moment, I lost track of them for the remainder of my run. Soon after, I returned home, jumping over the same wall. I thought of the situation again, and I realized that if I was running slower or unaware of their presence, this person would find it easier to harm me, and the outcome of this encounter would be more dangerous. I just wanted to add up that the behind the wall and fence is a lush park, and in the past, when I was still studying at that place, we once had an assembly because of some of the girls that were studying there too had encountered a predator while walking back home there. It was a long time ago, but I've never heard of the guy being arrested. I don't know what to think of all this, but I hope I never meet that stranger again. This is a very nice story, very fun. It reminds me of some of the things that, because I personally, I live in a secluded forest. So I understand how it's like to feel like you're being followed or watched. That's very creepy. My heart goes out to the OP. That's very, very, very disgusting. Very unfortunate that they had to deal with that, especially at 16. Like, what the goon? What the helly? That's not something somebody should deal with at all. But yeah, let's go on to the next story. The Uber driver who wanted me for himself by Scorpio_crown. English is not my first language, and I'm writing this on my phone, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. This happened about 7 years ago while my former relationship was ending. I was around 27 years old at the time. Me and my ex-boyfriend weren't living together anymore. We were separated for a few months, but not quite broken up yet. I just found out from his twin brother that he was keeping me as a backup while having fun with other girls, so I decided to end things. Side note, what the fuck? Why would you even do that in the first place? This is my personal anecdote. That's so weird. That's so disgusting. You shouldn't like be someone's fuck toy to just be thrown away like that. That's disgusting. Like backup, really. Um, it was my birthday. I was a bit emotional about this whole situation, so I decided to go to his place and end it properly face to face. I took an Uber and I went there to the other side of the city, very far away from here where I live and not in a so friendly or safe for girls area. I got there, we talked, and we ended things on good terms given the situation. Now it was time to call an Uber and go back home. This was happening in November on a rainy night at about 2 a.m. My ride came, and I got in, and I was just looking at the mirror and was thinking. After 5 minutes or so, I noticed that my Uber driver was looking at me in the rearview mirror, and every second when he could take his eyes off the road. I brushed it off. This wasn't the first time when it happened, and it was pretty sad to care. But then I noticed that he slowed down a lot. This is when I started to pay attention to my surroundings, but without giving him the sensation that I was doing so. I noticed that he was a pretty thin and tall guy, 25 to 30 years old. He looked like he wasn't taking very good care of himself, and his car was actually pretty dirty. I was just hoping to get home safe and fast at this point. Then, out of nowhere, he started talking. Driver, you are beautiful. And then the OP had a long pause and then said, thanks. Driver said, what's your name? And then the OP had a long pause and then she whispered her name, realizing that he could see it on the Uber app anyway. And then the driver said, what a hot name. I've always wanted to have sex with a girl named my name. Holy shit. And then the OP, total terrified silence. Yeah, I don't blame you. Driver staring at me in the rearview mirror. He started talking and rambling without pause, but expecting clear responses and reactions from me. Driver said, do you have a boyfriend? She screamed, yes. Driver said, what a shame. I wanted you for myself. Then silence came from the girlfriend. Driver said, but I don't mind the boyfriend. Let's go somewhere else. Come on, change the address in the app because I can't. Only you can. I know a place where we can go and be alone and smoke some weed. And then OP said, no, I can't. Take me to the address from the app. OP then said, at this point, I started to pay close attention to the route he was taking. I was so ready to jump out of the car if the situation had really gotten any dangerous. Then he puts on a local rap song, which I had never heard before. The lyrics were very explicit, describing what the singer does to a girl during sex. Extremely explicit lyrics. Driver, hear that? That's how someone having sex with me would be like. Oh yes, I would totally lick you like that and pull your hair. Holy gross, dude. What the goon? I'll just skip that. That's gross. And then her total silence. At this point, I started messaging my ex and telling him what was happening. It was also a good excuse to not have to look at him or reply. Driver then said, what do you think about that? And then she was silent, texting her ex. And the driver yelled, I asked what you think about that. Then her heart dropped and she froze and she said, well, I haven't heard this song before. And then driver asked, do you smoke weed? She said no. Driver said, smoke a joint with me. She said, no, thank you. Driver said, are you home alone? I could call it a night and go to your place and show you what I'm talking about. Her heart was racing so bad. Sorry, she wrote it wrong. At this point, I was so scared and shaking so hard. I was home alone, actually living alone. I decided to start recording him from here on and send the recording to my ex. OP said, no, my parents are waiting for me. Driver said, ugh, that sucks, man. But we can stay in the car. I'll join you on the back seat. We'll find a spot where it's dark. And then she said, no, I need to go home. I'm tired. And then some other fucking crazy shit that this dude is saying. And then the driver offered her weed and then started looking for it. My ex listened to this part and called me. I was so relieved when I saw my phone ringing. I answered and I made sure that the driver would hear that I'm on the phone with someone. He kept on talking, but I didn't hear much because he seemed to be upset about my phone call and he was mostly talking to himself. My ex was furious, but told me to say things out loud like where I am when I get home, as if he was asking me and I was answering. And other stuff, like my mom texted me and is waiting for me to say that I will call him when I get home, etc. I ended the phone call and the driver asked me if that was my boyfriend. I said it was. He kept silent for about 5 minutes and I was so anxious to get home. We had like 5 more minutes before getting to my address. When he saw on the map that we were getting close and he started asking me to go to somewhere or stay in the car with him, to smoke with him, to tell him everything about me, my life, that he thinks he fell in love, to break up with my boyfriend. His speech was getting scarier and he was getting more and more anxious that he couldn't convince me. He was turning to look at me, stopping at green stops so he could turn to me. I don't know what green stop is. I'm assuming stopping at a green light to turn to look at her. I don't know. After what seemed like forever, and after shaking like a leaf, when we got in front of my building, I practically jumped out of the car while he was like, no, don't go in. Where is your apartment? Let me come with you. I ran and entered the building. I had previously taken my keys out of my bag to open the intercom. I didn't turn on the light on the staircase because I didn't want him to see where in the block I live. It's a small block with 4 floors only. I stood there in the darkness and peeked out to a window to see if he was gone. He wasn't. He was looking at the block, probably waiting to see exactly where lights would turn on, aka where I live. I couldn't even enter my apartment because I had left the lights on in my hallway. He would have seen that. I waited like 5 minutes and he slowly left. I quickly entered my apartment and locked everything, but I did not turn on or off any lights so it wouldn't seem like someone got home or something. I went to peek out the window to be sure that he had indeed left, but surprise, he was back and parked this time. I was scared out of my mind. I know that many would say I should have called the police, but in my country, the police doesn't come for stuff like this. They barely show up in an hour if someone's being beaten or something. So he was there, just sitting there. And I got a message from an unknown number telling me to come down because he was waiting for me. I froze. I froze and I cried at this point. It was like my life could completely change because of a 30 to 40-minute drive from an unstable person. I didn't even know how he could take my number from the Uber app or if he buzzed me when he arrived to pick me up. I couldn't even remember. I didn't reply. He sent a few more messages. I remember that one in particular really creeped me out. He was asking me to at least smoke a cigarette with him on the phone so he could hear me breathing and smoking. I texted back saying to leave me alone. He started calling and I blocked the number. I was afraid that he could get so angry and try and get into the building and find me. I was looking out from the window from behind a curtain, and I saw that after I blocked him, when he tried to call and couldn't, he started smashing his phone against the steering wheel. He finally left after 40 minutes or so of staying there. I remained keeping watch for another 2 hours or so. He didn't return. Thank God. The next day he messaged and called from another number, but I blocked that one as well. He tried once more 1 year later. I was so surprised, honestly. I blocked that number too and never heard from him again. I'm also glad that I never saw him or his car again either, although right now I don't really remember how he looked like or what type of car he had. I reported everything to the Uber app and I hope that they took measures. Honestly, I don't understand why nobody before me reported him. It didn't feel like it was the first time when he did this. It was somehow so easy for him. It was one of the worst experiences ever. Thank you so much for reading. This turned out to be way longer than I expected. Yeah, that was really fucking long. Really gross too. Very terrifying. If I was that woman, honestly, this is why I'm going to carry a gun on me, like a pistol, like have a concealed carry. This is disgusting, especially in like late at night when it's raining in November. That's absolutely disgusting. I'm surprised you didn't call your ex to come out to get you. I don't know, but at least I was looking at comments. Apparently it was in Romania. Still very weird. I would have gotten my ex to come out and try and save me, beat this motherfucker up, but hey, what can you do? That was all the stories that I had today. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe. I want to do this as a regular thing, as a regular occurrence, but um even if this video doesn't do well, I'm probably still going to make like 2 or 3 more because this is really fun. I had a lot of fun reading these stories. Um, I'll see you guys later. I'll see you guys later. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Subscribe, I guess, if you want to. I don't know. I've always wanted to say that. Subscribe, leave a like, I guess, and then yeah, I'll see you guys later. Y'all have a great rest of your day.